McLaren's call on Sunday lit a fuse that is still burning. Oscar Piastri played it cool on the radio and in Parc Fermé, yet every line since has carried the same subtext. He does not believe he did anything wrong, and he resents paying a price for someone else's misfortune. That feeling is not unique to him. Mark Webber has been blunt about what he sees as creeping favoritism. And when a driver's manager knows that terrain as intimately as Webber does, his antenna goes up quickly. Damon Hill weighed in too, and the reaction he drew from fans tells you this is bigger than one slow wheel nut. The sequence was simple on paper and loaded in practice. Lando Norris was running second behind Max Verstappen. McLaren planned to pit both cars late, with Oscar Piastri stopping first to cover Charles Lear. Over radio, Will Joseph told Norris there would be no undercut. Norris asked the obvious question. Joseph confirmed the plan, and the die was cast. Piastri stopped and nailed a 1.8-second service. Norris arrived next and lost 4 seconds to a sticky front left. He rejoined behind his teammate. In pure sporting terms, that is racing. In contractual terms, McLaren had already promised the order would be preserved. What came next was the flashpoint. Tom Stallard told Piastri to hand the place back. Piastri's reply cut through the noise. They had agreed that slow stops are part of racing. So, what changed? He still complied, which is telling. A young driver, in a title fight, will swallow a bitter pill for the bigger picture, but the taste lingers. Andrea Stella later framed the decision as adherence to principles. The team had sequenced the stops to serve the team's interest. The intent was not to change positions. Since the slow stop flipped the cars, restoring the pre-pit order was, in Stella's words, the fair thing to do, then let them race. If you take McLaren in its words, this is about trust. Norris was promised no undercut, and the team had to stand by that promise even when fate intervened. If you take the racer's view, this is about risk, reward, and consequence. Piastri and his crew were executed, and the clock rewarded them. A 4.1-second delay is part of the sport's rough edges, the same way gusts of wind and late virtual safety cars are. The tension between those two logics will define how this story reads in a month's time. Public sentiment did not split down the middle. Hill poked at the policy with a tongue-in-cheek anecdote from 1994 and ran a poll. A clear majority said they were not happy with the order. Humor aside, that result tracks with the gut reaction of many fans. Team orders are tolerated when a title is on the line and one car is mathematically preferred. They are stoked when strategy is crystal clear. They are resented when they appear to stand down a genuine sporting outcome that unfolded on merit. Stella's counter is consistent, if nothing else. He stressed that the choice to put Piastri first and delay Norris was driven by race control risk and Ferrari coverage, and that the team had been explicit with both drivers that the sequencing would not flip track position. In that frame, restoring Norris to second was not a gift. It was a return to the baseline that had been contractually set between the pit wall and its drivers. He also said the team will review the principles again, both, for slow stops in isolation, and to stop sequencing and align with the drivers. That suggests the rulebook is still being written. The standings add spice. Piastri left Monza with his lead trimmed to 32 points, 8 races to go. The number is still healthy, but the tone shifted. When a driver loses 3 points after delivering a clean clinical Sunday, it compresses the mental margins. That is where Webber's voice matters. He has lived the worst version of this movie. He knows how small moments accumulate into narratives of preference, sometimes fairly, often not. When he says the points gap understates Piastri's control miles, he is making a technical case for respect, not a nationalistic plea. Norris, for his part, tried to lance the boil before it formed. He dismissed the idea that his mentality is soft, admitted he admires the flintier edge of drivers like Verstappen, and insisted he wants to win in his own way. That honesty is part of why the dynamic has stayed civil inside McLaren. Piastri is measured. Norris is more outwardly emotional. Both are fast enough to beat the other on any given Sunday. When two talents overlap that tightly, the team lives or dies by its ability to communicate boundaries in plain language before the lights go out. This is where the fan debate often goes sideways. People want villains. Webber as a grieved concealer, Norris as a protected asset, Piastri as wronged champion-elect, McLaren as either principled or manipulative. The truth is less theatrical and more fragile. A team in a title campaign needs rules that both drivers perceive as symmetrical. The moment one side believes the scale has tilted, performance erodes even if the factory insists the data says otherwise. You do not need to pick a bad guy to see the risk embedded in Sunday's call. Jacques Villeneuve's read is useful in that context. He argued that Webber is a weapon for Piastri precisely because he has lived the politics of a tight title run inside a team with a star teammate. Villeneuve also made the point that McLaren is not Red Bull 2010. There is no institutional bias carved into the walls. That is significant. It means the outcome is still in McLaren's hands. Keep the playing field even, and the drivers will keep the temperature low. Fumble the messaging or the consistency, and every slow stop or undercut will be read as intent. The Australian chapter of the story is now part of the theater. Piastri has already matched Webber's 9 wins and passed Ricciardo's 8. He is chasing Alan Jones and Jack Brabham. In parallel, he is chasing his first crown as the first non-European world champions since Wiener Nerve in 1998. That symbolism will sit over every late-season decision. When you are writing history in real time, every team order feels heavier than it might in April. McLaren cannot ignore that weight. They need to turn it into clarity rather than noise. So, what is the right principle? If you promise a driver no undercut and a service error flips the order, do you restore it as a matter of contract or let the race write the story on the road? There is no answer that wins universal approval. What you can do is set the rule in advance, write it down, read it to both drivers, and apply it without regard to the names on the timing screen. If that was the case at Monza, McLaren could defend the call. If the case was made vaguely or too late, they will wear the fallout. The closing act is predictable. Piastri will say the right words and bank the points. Norris will say he is over Zandvoort and keep swinging. The team will conduct a review that sounds procedural. Then Qatar will arrive with its own chaos, and the whole ecosystem will be stress-tested again. That is why Sunday matters more than 3 points. It is a stress test of the social contract inside the garage. If both drivers still believe the contract is fair, McLaren will go to the wire with 2 bullets. If doubt creeps in, the title gets harder than it needs to be. Strip away the noise and you find one essential tension. Racing purity rewards execution and accepts luck, good or bad. Team championship management rewards, promises, and minimizes exposure to risk. The best operations reconcile those ideas in language their drivers trust. McLaren says that is what happened.
You might say he gained advantage
he is not fully convinced. Webber's instincts suggest he will keep watch. Hill's audience suggests fans are not buying the corporate version yet. 8 rounds will decide which story ages better. If there is a lesson from Sunday, it is this. The fastest way to cool a controversy is not to bury it with soft words. It is to publish the principle, commit to it in advance, and prove that it applies in every direction. Do that, and McLaren's ethos will look like strength rather than spin. Fail, and the echoes of Monza will follow them all the way to Abu Dhabi. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments down below.